mindset. And if you can sit down and work on developing that, and some of the tools are obviously working on your gratitude journal, your victory log, which is all the great things that you've ever accomplished in your life. There's so much good going on in your life. And if you put that down on paper and look at that a lot, you're going to realize the type of person you are. And the other thing is your own personal feelings from the gut is a whole lot more important than what people say on the outside, because the world outside is mostly negative. And the bottom line is it's okay to like yourself, to pat yourself on the back for doing well. And you're going to know if you're being genuine or not. And it's so important to work on that for yourself and with other people. And so one of the things you can do with the other people that you're dealing with, that you're saying no to, is to acknowledge the good in them and just say, look, I just can't do this right now, but I really appreciate you coming to me in the first place. And, maybe some other time I'll be able to help you out. And maybe you can give them some resources or other ideas to work on. But the bottom line is you have to really be true to that person in the mirror. And you have to start with liking that person in the mirror yourself. Otherwise, no matter what you do for other people, you're not going to feel any better.
Exactly. And I mean, it sounds like an oxymoron, but the more positive you are, the better your mindset, the more positive you are about your self-image, the easier it is to say no. And I know that sounds odd, that saying no comes from a place of being positive, but it really does, because you're not simply doing what everybody else wants to try to get along. You're actually putting yourself first. And this is very important. And we touched on this in a way when we were discussing the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, where they talk about paying yourself first. Well, this is the same sort of thing, except instead of money, you're talking about time and energy. And you do need to put your needs first, because if you don't have the ability to help anyone else.
Yeah, again, really, really important is whether you say yes or no doesn't guarantee that you will make people feel how they want to feel. You can't predict that up front. And the bottom line is you can't predict how people are going to feel.
Exactly. So we talked briefly before going on the air about ways to make it easier to say no. So Chip, why don't you take us through some of those?
This is a good one. 5 steps that will make it easy to say no. Step number 1 is know what's at stake. And the bottom line is, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? It's probably something that's a priority of yours to do that. What are the long-term implications and that kind of thing? So you've got to know what's at stake. Number 2, if you don't want to answer right now, it's always okay to delay your response. Just say, I need a little bit more time to think about this, and I'll get back to you at a particular point in time. A good one that we talked about that you hadn't heard of and I didn't either, but it makes a whole lot of sense, is using the sandwich technique when you're saying no. And basically what that is if you have a sandwich, 2 pieces of bread, and then what's in the middle is actually the no, but the pieces of bread are both positive statements. So the first thing is, hey, thanks for reaching out to me. I really, really appreciate you asking me for my help and respecting me enough to do that. Then the meat of the order, the no, is, however, right now I have a very, very full plate and I really don't want to do this and not come through for you because of that. And then number 3 would be, I know that you have other resources to do this, and I know that you also have a lot of things that talents yourself where you can conquer this, keeping in mind that, again, a lot of people are asking you for help so they don't have to do something. And so the situation is like that. But it's always great to start and end with positivity and put the no in the middle. So that's technique. And then once you've done that, you can provide alternative solutions. If somebody's had a negative reaction to that, you can, maybe somebody else that they might ask for help or some resources and so on and so forth. If it's a tech thing online or whatever, basically what you're trying to do is solve the problem for them verbally so they have other directions to go, which is great. And, if worst comes to worst, number 5, which is really, really important, is you have to stand firm, protect your own boundaries. If the person can't be satisfied, that's not your problem. It's their own problem, and they're going to have to placate themselves.
All right. Sometimes saying no is simply saying no. And before we went on, I mentioned there is a commercial airing right now from Sundance Television advertising All in the Family reruns. And the clip that they show is Edith asking the question, well, how could I say no to that? And Archie cuts her off the way he always did and said, this way, Edith, no. And the point was, it was just that simple. It was just say no. Sometimes when you hem and haw, people will keep pushing. And if it's something you can't do or simply don't want to do, you have to come out and say no.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, those of you who know Archie Bunker know that he is a very, very extreme case with a lot of
yes.
And doesn't mind saying that, but using tact like that often is really, really important to do. Not so much like that, but extreme cases, obviously that's a great way to get the point across.
Right. And again, something that Chip had mentioned earlier is when you're saying yes to something, because of limited resources, I mean, there's only 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week. It generally means you're saying no to something else. So you really have to have your priorities down and understand where those priorities lie before you say yes or no to anything. Because you want to be saying no to low priority asks, where if something's a high priority, that's where you want to focus your time and energy.
Yeah, one of the good articles that I read was actually, it was entitled Recognizing a No Moment. And the way that you do this is by asking these different questions. And these could be apropos in a number of different instances, but here are 6 different questions that you could ask yourself depending on the situation. And the first one is, does this request help me in any way? Obviously, if it doesn't, then you're going to have to consider saying no. The next one is, will this make a big difference to my career if it's work based? If somebody's trying to have you do something for them, is it going to help you in the long run? On the home side of things, how will this affect my balance at home? I'm sure that this is a huge one out there where people commit to do things and all of a sudden they're taking time away from their family and their spouse and that kind of thing. And that's not real good either. The next one is really, I think, apropos big time. And it just says, do I have a feeling in the pit of my stomach when I think about saying yes? If you do, then it's probably a good idea to say no. The next one is, will I be mad at myself for saying yes instead of no, which is really just a little bit milder than the last one. And then the last question here is, am I eager to do this at all? Does any of it really appeal to me? And again, if you use some of these things that we talked about before as far as how to say no, after recognizing that you just have experienced a no moment, put those 2 things together and it should work for you. But the bottom line is, you do not want to do this if it's not the right thing for you to do. So asking yourself these questions is a great way to figure that out.
Yes, and those last 3, they're very important, because what they're telling you is that if you say yes, you're actually draining your own energy. You're draining your positivity. You're going to be dreading this. And by extension, most likely putting it off, not doing it well, certainly not giving it your all. And that's not what you want to be doing. If you're saying yes to something, you want to be able to do it well. And quite frankly, you want to be able to do it quickly. If it's something you're putting off or procrastinating because you really didn't want to do it in the first place, you're doing more damage to yourself by saying yes and dragging yourself through this than if you had just said no in the first place.
Yeah, and again, a lot of it depends upon who you're dealing with. I mean, if it's somebody that you really trust and want to help out and so on and so forth, it may be a little bit harder, but it's also a little bit easier to reason with them as far as why you're saying no. If there's somebody else who just doesn't want to do it themselves and wants to use everybody, it's a lot easier to answer these questions and say no accordingly. So it's really, really important to look at that and realize that if somebody responds negatively to you saying no, again, there's nothing you can do about that, and you shouldn't let it bother you, even though it's human nature to do so. That's something you have to work on yourself about, but you can't be everything to everybody, no matter how much you want to be. And some people out there are going to shock you in how much they like dealing with you, even if you've said no. And then other people are going to surprise you the other way, and you might do all kinds of things for them and think they're the best person in the world, and they're just going to walk away afterwards and not even thank you.
Right. And, something else for you to keep in mind is that you should really look at the value proposition of what you're being asked. If the cost or the effort to you is a lot less than the value of what you're doing for that person, that really does tip the scale to yes. And sometimes it's as simple as a request, your grandmother asks you to come over and help out around her house. Well, she can't do it. So the value to her is huge. But you're going over there really isn't any skin off your back. It's simple for you to do, but very difficult for her. So you want to be looking at the value proposition. If it's something that you can do as a matter of course, and it's not really going to stress you out, it's not going to be a problem, absolutely say yes. You don't want to be the person that always says no. You want to save those no's for when they should really be used.
Yeah, and obviously it's a case-to-case basis, but it does all go back to respecting your time and what you can and what you can't do and what you really want to do.
Absolutely. All right, we're just about out of time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for this week?
Well, it begins with your own foundation, your own personal plan and your own business plan, so that you have your priorities set straight and can ask yourself the questions up front as to whether you should be doing this or saying no. And then obviously learning a few techniques like the sandwich method as far as how to handle people with that. It's important to do that too. But the bottom line is you have to respect your time and you have to respect what you're looking to do. And obviously what other people think of you, you can't do anything about that. So you got to kind of stick to your guns as far as that goes. And you're going to have a whole lot happier and managed life by doing so. There's a whole lot of advantages to saying no.
Yes. I think that for me, the big takeaway is that saying no has more to do with your relationship with yourself than it does with your relationship with the person you're saying yes or no to. It's about knowing what you're good at, what you can do, what your time looks like, and is it something you can fit into your schedule or not, and how you feel about yourself in terms of self-esteem. So the better you understand yourself, the more comfortable you are saying no. And that's something to remember, because people who say yes to everything rarely get all of it done. That's something to think about. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch us every week at xvadio.com/podcasts. You can find us at the iTunes Store, the Apple Podcasts app, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. See you then.